Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm Jay Focus, and if Loki was born from a frost giant, then I'm a stone god. You hear me? Lowercase g. Now, I'm here from Potheads Love Movies, and this is episode 9. Yeah, we've been rocking, and we here again with episode 5 of Loki, titled Journey into Mystery. Now, this episode was also named after the comic where Loki first appeared with Thor, Journey into Mystery 85, featuring classic Loki, or at least the old Loki costume that we see in the current Loki show. Now, just as an overview, the TVA has been sending people to the void instead of killing them when they've been pruned. Earlier in the episode, we see a destroyed tower. Is it the Avengers Tower? Not exactly. It reads Qeng, and you pronounce that Kang. Yeah. Now, speaking of Kang, I want to bring up somebody that Kang did have to deal with in the comics. Very obscure character, Aliyah. Yeah. Super low-key, super obscure character from the comic. Maybe 12, 13 issues where we see him. And it was amazing to actually see him used in the show. I didn't expect it at all. This character was the first to break away from a linear progression within the timeline, meaning it could create its own branches of universe. Yeah. So, meaning not even Kang the Conqueror has an empire big as what we witness here. Now, this empire of universes is way bigger than we actually get a chance to take a look at, but come on. It seems like throughout the stories and throughout the comics, Kang avoids Aliyah at all costs like my fucking ex. You hear me? Colony is out right now, by the way, by Jay Focus. Seemed like it wasn't no box like my exes, I had to get over it. Now I make a toast to it. Damn. Let's drink a toast. Let it run. Yeah. Anyway, there's actually a version of Renslayer in the comic that frees a trapped Aliyah. Yeah. Now, speaking of snakes, we realize Renslayer was all Captain America, and shortly after, Sylvie swipes a temp pad trying to relive her glory years or some shit, and she prunes herself. Yeah. We do see Miss Minutes bullshitting around with Renslayer, talking about she looking for files, but I think we can go ahead and shut down all of the rumors stating that Miss Minutes was the big bad in all control throughout this season. I really don't think she's in any control at all. I think she does know more than she's letting on, but that's about it. We find out Renslayer knew about the temporal trash can that they call the Void this entire time, and that people definitely weren't being just completely wiped out. Now, they stated that the Void was created pretty much as a way to get rid of the things that they couldn't get rid of when they set off the time reset charge. Also, in the episode, we come to understand why so many Lokis exist. Is they're like we thought Twinkies were supposed to be. Good forever. Okay, these is cockroaches who will survive to the end of the end. We also discover Renslayer really wants to know who runs shit to keep it going, not to end it like Sylvie does. Sounds like an origin story if I ever heard one, at least for the MCU, considering how close she is to Kang the Conqueror in the comics. The scenes of Loki. Anyway, the scenes searching for Silas are jam-packed with Easter eggs. Like, the Living Tribunal's head was huge, super huge. The Thanos copter from Spidey Super Stories, which is like a more kiddie version of the Spider-Man stories. Kid Loki pulls a sword from the comics called Leviathan. I want to say that that's the name of it, the real name, or the flaming sword from Thor number 368. Shortly after we have met Throg, or Frog Thor. We see a giant version of Yellow Jacket's helmet. Maybe, he was in some version of the galaxy where he was still a giant and he just roamed around destroying everything and he didn't belong. So the TVA got rid of him. We also see Thor's hammer in the underground scene when the Loki are going to the bunker. Right under Thor's hammer is a jar with Throg, or Frog Thor, inside. Obviously no longer worthy because he cannot get out of that little ass jar, man. Inside Kid Loki's lair, kingdom thing, we also see a video game called Polybius. Alright, now, so I'm going to go ahead and explain this. Now, Polybius is an urban legend that emerged in early 2000 concerning a fictitious 1980s arcade game. The legend describes the game as part of a government-run, crowdsourced psychology experiment based in Portland, Oregon during 1981. Gameplay supposedly produced intensive, psychoactive, and addictive effects in the player. These few publicly staged arcade machines were said to have been visited periodically by Men in Black for the purpose of data mining the machines and analyzing these effects. Allegedly, all of these Polybius arcade machines disappeared from the arcade market. So, it's just this kind of cool Easter egg, just showing things in real history that have an unexplainable story behind it. I think it was a really cool element of the episode. We do find Renslayer attempting to access files Loki wasn't able to with Miss Minutes a bit later in the show. Renslayer does take a second to pay a little homage to the Wizard of Oz, mentioning finding the man behind the curtain. Yeah. Now back to the Lokis. They're knocking back cheap wine from Roxcorp, a company I did mention earlier this season from the comic, and Alligator Loki is getting straight wasted off that shit. You hear me? At this point in the story, classic Loki breaks down his age difference with the others, fleeing the fight with Thanos, and sparks the hero inside of Keystone Loki. I guess that's what we can call our Loki. Classic Loki eventually will redeem himself later in the story. Once Loki decides to go find a way to defeat Alioth, we meet the Loki gang, including their leader, President Loki, and a few of the variants the TVA explained earlier in the season, making me wonder where the fuck is the Hulk Loki at? I want to see that guy in action. Yeah. We find Sylvie in an escape from Alioth as she discovers she can enchant him, as she's saved by a pizza delivery car driving Mobius. While the pair drives, more and more Easter eggs. Yeah, just all over the place. Look, there's that one over there, there's the other one. Yeah, it's a lot of them. Now, all the Lokis start to speak of backstabbing. No reference to classic Lokis talk about daggers, and boastful Loki mentions he's betrayed Kid Loki for the king status. Now, I gotta hand it to the Alligator Loki for his opening attack. Awesome. Classic Loki creates doppelgangers and opens a portal, making me wonder why the fuck they all that opening scene in the first place at the start of the episode. Anyway, Kid Loki uses a device that leads them to the USS Eldridge, just popping up out of nowhere, and that also has a cool story behind. Now, this ship was supposedly a part of a government experiment called the Philadelphia Experiment. Now, the Philadelphia Experiment was a purported naval military experiment at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard in Philadelphia sometime around the 28th of October 1943, in which Eldridge was to be rendered invisible to human observers for a brief period. Yeah, now the story is considered a hoax. There is a general lack of interest for the alleged experiment. The person who started the myth, a man called himself Carlos Miguel Allende, admitted that he had made up the story and related to the author Morris K. Jessup. So, you know, maybe it was just some kind of hoax. They also said that instead of becoming invisible, it might have disappeared into a subdimension and came right back. So who knows, man. That was really cool, though, to see how they incorporated that into this episode. Now, the Lokis were on their way to Alioth, not even knowing that Sylvie was on her way to Alioth as well with Mobius. All right, so don't laugh. Don't laugh. The seamen on the ship, I said don't laugh. The seamen attempt a physical attack on Alioth, showing us physical force is a no-go, which is why Loki suggests a readjustment of the plans and, why they end up using magic as a way to defeat Alioth. Now, more of Renslayer's evil side guest stars in this scene right here with Hunter B-15 as she extracts the motives or the motivation behind Sylvie's motive. I think Renslayer will eventually catch up to Loki at the end of the timeline. After Miss Minutes appears and Renslayer asks for the files to the beginning of time, we actually get an understanding of what she's attempting to do at this point. Mobius informs the Lokis that he's turned on the TVA and expresses his doubt Alligator Loki is really a Loki, since he doesn't actually exist in the comics, and he said he never arrested him. Now, Mobius mentions a game within the game, and I think it foreshadows Loki being the big bad guy here. King Loki, maybe he's some kind of He Who Remains fusion with Loki? I don't know, man. I think that's my fucking guess here. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Loki and Sylvie are all caked up together, talking about their future and what seems like it'll be together. And I told y'all, Loki on Loki action. Anyway, the upcoming wide shot of the surroundings shows that the landscape is actually the Dark Aster's wreckage, which is Rodin's ship in Guardian of the Galaxy 1. Mobius takes the temp pad from Sylvie and tells Loki he's his favorite. A little creepy, but whatever. I guess it's an episode 1 callback. After that, a statue of the Living Tribunal's head can be seen, and I'll give you guys a bit of backstory on him, as it's really important to what's coming up with Kang the Conqueror later. So, the Living Tribunal. Now, the Living Tribunal was a vastly powerful humanoid cosmic entity who was created as long as the universe itself. Its function is to safeguard the multiverse from an imbalance of mystical forces. Now, it may act to prevent one universe from amassing more power than any of the others, or from upsetting the cosmic balance in some kind of way. The Tribunal may also act to prevent an overwhelming imbalance of good or evil evil within a universe. When a matter involves only one universe, the tribunal may leave the final judgment to the abstract, quote-unquote, entities there. In Earth 616's universe, Lord Chaos and Master Order. The living tribunal doesn't possess alternate counterparts, as there is only one living tribunal in the multiverse. However, he does or can simultaneously in multiple planes of reality, giving the exist in multiple planes of reality, giving the appearance of multiple variations to the human perceptions. Now, if it means preserving the mystic balance, the tribunal has the power to obliterate an uninhabited planet. It can turn a star into a supernova with a single force bolt. The tribunal manifests itself as being with three faces, which represents the three sides of the tribunal's personality. Its front face, through which it usually speaks, represents equity. The fully hooded face on the right side represents necessity, and the partially hooded face on its left side represents revenge. Just revenge at that. All three voices must agree in a case before the tribunal can intervene. Now, they've referenced him in the MCU before in Doctor Strange with the staff of the tribunal. Why the tribunal had a staff beats the fuck out of me. Now, they even cut the living tribunal from Endgame. Too complicated after the fact that the story had already started. That probably would have added a little bit more complicated than, complications than necessary. And I'm glad they kind of cut that shit. I want to take a look at that scene though. Richard E. Grant kills it, no pun intended, with his sacrifice scene at the end. It was amazing. Him building his timeline's version of Asgard to distract Goliath. Of course, it's not the Asgard that we're used to. It's his version of it, which is why it does look a little bit different. Now, at this point, Sylvie convinces Keystone Loki he can use enchanting abilities, and he pulls it from within using the power of friendship. Nah, that's his power, because he is Loki. Loki is he. Once Sylvie and Loki pull back the curtain, we can also see the sacred timeline referenced in episode's 1 explanation video. Also, throughout all of the trailers for the show, of course. Where the colors meet is the end of the multiverse, and behind it, slightly in green there, that is where Kang the Conqueror is supposed to be at the end of the timeline, past the sacred timeline. At this point in the game, He Who Remains and King Loki are the only two big bads who can make sense, so I'm eager to see what He Who Remains brings to the show, and if He Who Remains is some kind of fusion fucking Gotenks of He Who Remains from the comics and King Loki here in the show. Let me know what you guys think. I'm really eager to know who you think the big bad is here. I am Jay Focus. This is episode 9, Potheads Love Movies.